Boom, boom, ba.
Okay.
Okay.
Power again today?
Yes, coming in today. I need to be called in to call them.
Welcome to the
Golan Benoni's
conference room. Please enter your... At the tone, please record your name, followed by the pound key.
Paltiel.
Thank you. You are now entering the... You are participant number 3.
Yeah,
Okay. I think we are on the line just below the middle of the page, Dalit. About 3-4 lines below. The line begins with the word Yishtanu.
What page are we on?
Dalit.
The line, 3 lines before the...
down below the middle.
3 lines before the beginning of the page.
Oh, 3 lines before the beginning of the page.
No,
The what? The beginning of the page.
Right
The middle of the
below
page.
the middle. Down.
All right.
Oh, Yishtanu, the seed of the seed. Okay. You know. Ah, that's true.
So we're going into great detail, the various pathways and the various conduits that are facilitated by the Kav. This is all in line to explain the principle of derech havai. So he says that there are many tzinoiris, offshoots of the major conduit, like he explains the muscle of the water conduit. That the first thing is that it has to be a conduit of the river, because the river itself cannot be supplying the individual kelim. And then from that conduit you can draw smaller and yet smaller and different types of pathways.
Like the circulator.
Excuse me. And the point to understanding this is not just that the multiple sub conduits and so forth. It goes into great detail, and we'll go through it, to the extent necessary. But the important point and why there is all that detail, why there is of multiplicity, is to understand that the function of bringing the oil, just like in the case of the mushal of the water, bringing it to wherever it is brought, and then further down into a lesser keli and so forth. The important point to understand there is that the immediate source from where this is coming into this particular keli has a relationship with the particular keli to which it is supplying. Like in the case of the water, we're going to see eventually the summation of this thing. In the case of the water, you're drawing the very same water that flows in the river. So the water doesn't change. So what's the point? You just give it water. So we're saying the proper way to draw the water and the proper way to fill the keli, the cup, is that the faucet that fills the cup is measured and is specifically designed to fill a cup. Even though it is related to the source of water and so forth, but it has to be a direct relationship. And if it does not have a direct relationship, it is not really supplying it properly.
A relationship to the source or a relationship to the keli?
Both, between the keli and the source. That way, the keli is not overwhelmed. It's not just given filled without sensing of what it is that is being filled and why it is being filled. There's a relationship between the supply and the source, and as it goes through, and this is why there are all of these various levels. The major conduit, the sub-conduit, the sub-conduits, and so forth. This is what he's bringing down from Kabbalah, Tzinoiris, and it says thousands of Tzinoiris, as we're going to see in a moment. All for the purpose of allowing there to be a relationship between the recipient and the giver. So that the recipient is not just getting something which does not have a basis for his being. Like this is the Moshe we are constantly saying. You have your food, but you have to know where you got it from. That is very important. If you just have the food without a giver, then you can't relate to it. In the Moshe of the host and all that. Okay, so the line begins with Shtan L'Fi Abchinas La'alofim. The Tzimnei Pardes explains Yishtanu, they alter, they change from one another. L'Fi Abchina, according to the Bchina, according to the Tesser, according to the very specific function of that particular Tzimnei La'alofim 2000. Lepo'omim into the thousands. Lepo'omim, there are occasions that yoyiru bedera b'chinas hakeser shebechol hasfiris. Occasionally, the tzineres would shine through, and when it will come, their supply will come through the bechina of the keser of the sphira. Ulepeomim, and then other times mibchinas hachochma. It is actually shining through the bechina of chochma. Umeir mebechinas chochma shebekeser. If the inyan is that it is trying to relate through chochma, it will be chochma shebekeser. Sheyesh ma'ila zu l'ma'ila mizu. that there's a milas, one above the other, indefinitely, bebchinas ha'oret hatzineris. In this element of the oil hatzineris. Because of Shom, the Shem Sefer Hatzineris, the writes of there in Partes, sheyesh be brought to use, that in ultimate detail there is Tov Reish Elef Tzineris. 600,000 Tzineris. Of the Sefer, I believe it is Kihos Yankiv, Erech Tzineris, he says the Misper Hanal, that this number of 600,000 who be'es Spheres. Now this is only in the 10 spheres. V'yesh Leimer, and this is only in 10 spheres of Atzilus. Therefore, to expand upon that, it is appropriate to say, Shekein hu gam ba'elam ezo insof shelifnei Atzilus, that even the oilam ezo insof, and they're called oilam ezo insof because they are not identifiable by spheres, which is before the Atzilus, shegam ken ha'amshochu hi al dei tzineris protim, that there too the Hamshochi comes to tzineris protim, hanimshochim min hakav, that are drawn from this kav. Rak, except shelamaylo me'atzilus, that above Atzilus, hamshochi hatzineris hei mehakav atzmi, the tzineris are drawn from the kav itself. And in Atzilus, the Tzineris are drawn from the Ha'ora of the Kav. Okay, we are not, I think we've just gone through this just to understand what the ultimate point is. That this is what's called the pathway. And by these pathways, there is a continuous correlationship, a continuous recognition of the supply and of the mashpia and the makabel. B'me'er eis tzadik she'iflamet kosav tziner hu yisoid. That tziner is referred to is the midas ha-yisoid. Tziner oisi is rotzin. Tziner had the old letters of rotzin. The yisoid. And what is the relationship between Tziner and Rotzin and Yisoid? The Yisoid, who, because Yisoid, who bechinas Rotzin v'cheishek, the Yisoid represents the will and the desire, hamashpia lehashpia, of the mashpia to be mashpia. And this is what the whole principle is, again, the similar principle that we said. It is not just that there is an infinite supply of water, or in the nimshul the oil, and therefore let it go wherever it goes, and whoever picks it up, picks it up. No, there is a direct intent, and this is the pshat that it goes to the yisod. The rotzim b'cheshek hamashpia lehashpia, and this is why it is measured precisely, and that's why there are different scenarios and different pathways for each particular hashpah. The hu inyan hayiskashu the yisoid. This rotzin hashpia is the principle that is discussed in Tanya and elsewhere, that it has kashu the yisoid, that the yisoid is the hayiskashus. Yiskashus means the bonding. V'hakav shenikot tzinoy, the kav itself is also called the tzinoy. Shorshoy mibchinas yisoid hanela. That is also rooted in yisoid. But this is the yisoid hanelam. The yisoid hanelam means the subtle yisoid, the yisoid that is contained within the oil and seif. Again, as we shall discuss it at great length later, that the kav, as we already learned, is from the oil that is choser v'heir. And the reason it's choser v'heir, the reason it comes back and meir again, because there is this cheshek, this intent to be mashpia, mikirach kiruf. It is not just that there is an infinite supply. But derech kiruv, it's initiated, it's instigated milmaila from the mashpia. V'zeh Ayin. And this is also the principle of the posuk tzaddik havaya b'chol dorocho. The havaya is tzaddik b'chol dorocho. What is the reference of tzaddik? The tzaddik hu b'chinas yesod. Tzaddik is in your yesod. V'neida the havaya hu b'chinas hamshochas ha'oiris. Havaya, we know, is referring to the hamshoch of the oiris, as we speak of the havaya yud kei vav kei. This is how the oiris are nimshach. But tzaddik havaya hu ha'hamshocha mibchinas yesod hanelem de'irisof shelifnei hatzimtzum. This is why tzaddik havaya, that havaya, the hamshocha of the oiris, is in a manner of tzaddik, which means it's in a manner of yesod. It is an intentional hamshocha of the irisof shelifnei hatzimtzum shenimshach behadrochim, that is drawn into these very pathways, hein bechinas hatzinoiret hanimshochim mehakav, which is the various conduits that are drawn from the kav, shuhu haderech v'hatziner hagol. The kav, this is the major highway, so to speak, the throughway. Okay, now he's going to put it a little bit into oasis of hasbara. V'hinei tziner v'derech hu inyan echot. The principle of tziner is a different term, and the reason for this term is to denote the fact that it is something which is initiated from above, and there's a rotzen, there is a special force towards this hashpah. It is not just an open, unintended opening, but in principle, to understand what the tziner and derech hu inyan echad. It's one idea, one principle. Derech, we will be able to understand better because that is something which we experience all the time. Derech, what is a derech? A roadway, a pathway. It is made to pass through it from city to city. In both directions, going and return. And the principal derech, the big roadway, this is the derech that leads and enables you to go through and reach many cities. Misoviv, from all around, alidei drochim ktanim, by utilizing smaller offshoot roads, she'evrim umistafim mehaderech hazeh, that pass umistafim and branch off from this major highway, umagiim, and they reach al yodom through, as a result of these smaller roadways, laharbe mekenis, to many places. So therefore it comes out that inyan haderech hu, that what is the ultimate principle of derech, hahilocha v'hahivo, the going and bringing back, the coming and return, lakama yores, to many cities, shalidei haderech, we are alidei haderech, by facility of this pathway, mischabrim or miskashim kulom. They are connected and bound to all of them. The derech is a facilitator. It's true. That it is the person goes through the derech, but the derech that facilitates this passing actually, on a deeper sense, actually connects all the various cities and makes them interrelated. This is, okay, we're going to go into this now. In derech hu, the derech, the pathway itself, hu rag hamokoim lehilu ha'od. What is derech? Derech is just a place to reach that facilitates the walking, the passing of the person.
It's like a vessel too, isn't it?
V'hoyiker hu. What did you say?
It's like a vessel also, like a keli.
No, derech is not a cave. V'hoyiker hu ha'odom ha'hela b'haderech. What is the derech itself? Now, with the fact that there is a connection, a connecting pathway between two cities, that connection itself, as such, does not really accomplish anything by the fact that there is a derech. What is the ultimate accomplishment, goal of this derech? It is ha'odam ha'hela b'haderech. It is the person who takes this road and walks upon it. V'chein hatziner. And the similar union is the tziner. The tziner, the conduit that carries water. Who rag, the value and the significance of the tziner is only that mashahamayim misamtzimim boy. It is the fact that the waters are collected and are limited in terms of their flow through this conduit. But the principle is, what is the important thing of this tziner is that it carries the water, where in essence, hey mei hanohor habilti mitzumso. In essence, these are the same waters that are flowing in the river, bilti mitzumtzomim, without any restriction. Okay, so we now are getting an idea where this is leading. To understand that, yes, indeed, there is the pathways, and they are tzimtzumim, but the idea of the tzimtzum is to bring the real essential reality through this pathway, not to alter it, but to bring it through and to a distant place. That this is what the pathway is. The human being that goes from city to city via the roadway, when he's on the road and he's not at home, he's not in his city, he's in the middle of nowhere, it's the same human being, except he is trying to reach and accomplish something, but it's the same human being. That is the new from the roadway. The roadway is not to change the person, to reduce the person to something less than what a person is. Even though at this time he is not in his abode, not in his full glory, so to speak, but it's the same person essentially.
The term the mehanara built him in tzimtzomim. What is that? We said that the tzinar identifies the limit aspect in the water, and that's why it's able to carry the gavul aspect. And here we're saying that the water that's going through the tzinar is bilti mitzumtzam. It's I understand about the person, but how does it relate to
the gavul aspect of the water does not change the water. It is that this same water can be supplied via a limited fashion. It is not the full aspect that it's a different water. Yes, just like the person can live, he's supposed to live in his home. But he can pick up, and go. But it's the same, essentially it's the same person, but he's not in full glory, in full expression. This is the same thing. The water is the built in Mitzvah. This is the way the waters are in their source. But you can also identify in the waters the ability, the same water, to be put into a finite, a limited process, conduit, in order to reach a far distance.
We don't say that the waters become mitzvah. We just say that
the water doesn't change itself in itself, and it is constantly alluding back to the endless, infinite supply where it's coming from. As a matter of fact, to put this in perspective in our experience, we open the faucet and the water comes out. The water comes out in force. What's forcing the water to come out?
There's machinery and pressures.
What's the pressure? It's the original supply of the water.
The original. Well, there are stations that pump it. There are pumps.
The pumps don't pump the water into your faucet. The pumps pump the water to a higher area. They collect the water on a higher plane, and then the flow of the water itself is what pushes it into your faucet.
Like an artery.
No, please.
Rabbi, all
An artery is like a vessel. It contains what thing that's flowing from point A to point B.
All right, fine. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Rabbi, the water is in real life. The water is changed by the heat. It picks up the taste in the metal of the water, and the neshama is changed.
Okay, fine.
It's like that, right?
Okay, ukmoi kain. Okay, this is the ultimate purpose. Ukmoi kain. So similarly, yesh leimar. These are all the Masholim, the Tzaneiros are all Masholim to explain the Kav. The same thing, Yesh Leimar, this is about how this translates in the Kav. The Hamshochas HaKav, in the Hamshoch of the Kav. The Mashahu Bibchinas Kav, the fact that this is Bibchinas Kav, in a Kav form. And what is a Kav? As we explained, the Kav is a line, which is a multi-pointed, which means a narrow conduit, a narrow pathway. And there is an upper part, and a middle part, and a lower part. Hu bechinas ha-tzimtzum. This is the element of tzimtzum. What does tzimtzum mean? Tzimtzum means mashenim dad lefi erech ha'olam is. This is the cup. Mashenim dad lefi erech ha'olam is. It is that it was measured lefi erech ha'olam is, according to the erech, according to the measure of worlds. And we discussed many times what is the measure of worlds. The measure of worlds is that there should be that the supply should come in a measured manner, without overwhelming. In other words, recognizing that there's a cave. Just like when a person wants to drink water. He doesn't jump into the lake, as mentioned, to drink water. There's no way he can drink by jumping into the lake. He has to take it into a cup, and he has to feed it to his mouth in a limited fashion. And if he does not feed it, it's the same water. But then it's going to be completely counterproductive in terms of worlds. The water is going to be wonderful. But the worlds will not be accepting it. It will not do its function. Instead of giving chayes, it will drown it. This is the pshat that the kav is mitzumtzum lefi erech ha'elamis, according to the measure of the worlds. And again, measure of world is that, especially when you're talking about world in dry land. We'll talk about fish, but dry land entities is that there has to be a cognizance of the recipient and the giver and what is being given. That's Ayin lefi erech ha'elamis. Like we give the mashal, okay, very quickly, the thing that we always mention of the child who knew the whole Torah at birth, and we said that's not knowledge at all. Why? Because he didn't go through the process of acquisition. If he didn't experience getting it, then he doesn't have it. Differently, lefi erech ha'elamis. In our neshamas we have everything, but what do we really have? That which we have worked to understand and to bring out in a conscious knowledge. That's the lefi erech ha'elamis. That's what the neshama has. In Keser and Rotzim, this is high in the morals. This is not in Seder Ishtalshus. This is the pshat that the kav is mitzumtzum lefi erech ha'elamis. It wants just one more line quickly. But in essence, what is the kav supplying? It's not trying to restrain it, to withhold anything, but it wants that it should be accepted in the world. And the only way to do that is to supply it in a manner that the world can process it bit by bit. That's what a kav is. You process it bit by bit. And once you swallow this first gulp, here's the next one. Here's the next one. It's not limiting. What I'm trying to do is that you should experience what you're getting. Okay, this is it for today.
So like saying when you open the faucet, you feel that there's a never-ending supply, that you could open it whenever you want, basically, and always draw.
Yeah, well, clearly there's. Ultimately, yes. Ultimately, this supply is drawn from a reservoir that we can call like an infinite supply, and the water flow is caused by that pressure. Ultimately. All right, this is it for this morning.
Did you know that the blog wasn't working?
Yeah, I heard that from, but then later on I checked.
Started to work.
Oh, it was back to normal.
Started to work.
Yeah.
Why don't you check out the notes?
No,
Yeah,
it sounds
thanks
good.
for telling me.
Thank you.